I had always been drawn to the stories that lurked in the shadows, the ones that made you question what lurked just beyond the edge of the ordinary. My latest assignment had brought me to a small, forgotten town, draped in a perpetual gloom that seemed to seep into your bones. The town was notorious for a string of unexplained disappearances, each marked by a trail that led nowhere, and a silence that spoke of unspeakable things. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for the macabre, this was exactly where I needed to be. The town, if it could even be called that anymore, was a collection of faded buildings and desolate streets. It felt like walking into a photograph from a bygone era, where the color had drained away, leaving only shades of gray. The air was heavy with a sorrow that was almost tangible, as if the town itself was mourning. I noticed the missing persons posters, tattered and faded, clinging to the walls like the last whispers of hope. My first night there, I stayed in a small inn that had seen better days. The innkeeper, a woman with eyes that held too many unspoken stories, simply nodded when I mentioned I was investigating the disappearances. "Be careful," she said, her voice a low warning. "Some things in this town don't like to be disturbed." I thanked her, curiosity piqued. What was this thing that the townsfolk feared but never spoke of directly? That night, as I lay in the creaky bed trying to sleep, I heard it for the first time, a soft rustling sound, like dry leaves being disturbed. I glanced out of the window and saw a shape moving in the shadows. It was large, hulking, and seemed to be made entirely of rags that fluttered and whispered with every movement. Two glowing points, like eyes, shone briefly before it disappeared into the night. I knew then, this was no ordinary assignment. There was something here, something that lurked in the sorrowful heart of this town. And I was going to uncover it, whatever it took. The following morning, fueled by the eerie encounter and armed with a notebook and my camera, I set out to unearth the secrets of the town. My first stop was the local library, a decrepit building that looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in decades. Inside, amidst the musty smell of old books and the quiet rustle of turning pages, I found records of the town's history. It was a history steeped in tragedy, fires, accidents, unexplained losses. It was as if the town was cursed. As I dug deeper, I stumbled upon local folklore about the Ragman, a spectral entity rumored to be the harbinger of sorrow and the collector of lost souls. The legend said it was a figure made entirely of rags, with glowing eyes, preying on those overwhelmed by grief. Initially, I dismissed it as a superstitious attempt to explain the unexplainable. But the image of the ragged figure I had seen the previous night lingered in my mind, unshakable. Later that day, while exploring the outskirts of the town, I experienced my second encounter with the Ragman. I was walking near an old, abandoned house when I heard the rustling again. I turned, and there it was, emerging from the shadows. Its form was towering, an amalgamation of tattered cloth, and those glowing points where eyes should be fixed on me. I felt a chill that went beyond the physical, a dread that clawed at my soul. I ran, not stopping until I reached the relative safety of the town's main street. Over the next few days, I continued my investigation, delving into the stories of those who had gone missing. Each story was a tapestry of sorrow, of lives cut short, and dreams left unfulfilled. My nights were restless, filled with dreams of ragged figures, and the sound of rustling cloth. I began to feel a deep empathy for the victims, their stories weaving into my consciousness, urging me to uncover the truth. It was during these days that I had more sightings of the Ragman. Each encounter was closer than the last, as if it was taking an interest in me. I could feel its gaze, those points of light boring into me, and each time, I barely escaped its grasp. The Ragman was no mere legend, it was real, and it was here. My resolve hardened, I had to find a way to stop it. I became more determined than ever to unravel the mystery of the Ragman. My days were consumed with interviews, old newspaper clippings, and local lore. I pieced together the sightings, trying to find a pattern or a weakness. The more I learned, the more the story of the Ragman became a tapestry of the town's grief and despair. The Ragman's presence began to feel oppressive, a constant shadow at the edge of my vision. I narrowly avoided several encounters, each more chilling than the last. It was during one such encounter that I realized its interest in me was growing. The air would grow cold, and the rustling of its rags would surround me, suffocating and relentless. Only by sheer luck or desperate sprints did I manage to escape its clutches each time. I interviewed family members of the missing, each tale adding to the aura of sorrow that seemed to fuel the Ragman. Their stories were heart-wrenching, loved ones who vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void filled with pain and unanswered questions. It was clear that the Ragman was drawn to this sorrow, feeding on it, thriving in it. As the days passed, the town's heavy atmosphere seemed to weigh on me, seeping into my bones. I could feel the sadness of the place, a lingering despair that clung like a second skin. I realized that to fight the Ragman, I needed to understand it, to know why it was bound to this endless cycle of grief. My research led me to ancient texts and forgotten rituals, tales of entities born from collective sorrow, their existence, a testament to the pain of the souls that comprised them. The Ragman wasn't just a predator, it was a manifestation of accumulated grief, an entity created from the despair of countless lost souls. Armed with this knowledge, I formed a plan. The Ragman was vulnerable to fire and sharp objects, anything that could tear through its fabric body. I gathered what I needed, a sense of determination steeling me against the fear that whispered in the back of my mind. I would confront the Ragman, expose it to the world, and end its reign of sorrow. I chose an abandoned warehouse for the confrontation, a place where no innocence would be caught in our deadly dance. The night was moonless, the perfect setting for a confrontation with a creature born from darkness and sorrow. I made my way to the abandoned warehouse, my backpack heavy with cans of gasoline, a lighter, and my camera. My plan was simple. Lure the Ragman in, set it ablaze, capture the evidence on camera, and escape. The weight of the task at hand pressed down on me, but my resolve was unyielding. As I entered the warehouse, the rustling sound filled the air, a chorus of whispers and sighs that seemed to emanate from the very walls. The Ragman emerged from the shadows, its form more menacing than ever. The glowing eyes fixated on me, piercing through the darkness. The cold shiver ran down my spine, but I stood my ground. I didn't wait for it to make the first move. I threw the gasoline cans towards it and struck the lighter. Flames erupted, casting a flickering orange glow over the warehouse. The Ragman recoiled from the fire, but to my horror, it didn't flee. Instead, it began to reshape its form, the rags twisting and writhing, as if the fire was only a minor annoyance. I snapped pictures, the camera's flash cutting through the darkness. But the Ragman advanced, undeterred by the flames that licked at its fabric body. I realized then that my plan was failing. The Ragman was stronger than I had anticipated, its desire to envelop me overriding its fear of fire. In a moment of desperation, I tried to run, but it was too late. The Ragman lunged, its rags extending like tendrils. They wrapped around me, pulling me into its embrace. I felt an indescribable coldness as the rags began to envelop me, smothering, suffocating. Then, the world changed. I was no longer in the warehouse, but in a maelstrom of memories and emotions. I saw the lives of those the Ragman had taken, their joys, their sorrows, their final moments of despair. I felt their pain, their longing, their unfulfilled dreams. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of collective grief that threatened to drown me. In that eternity of moments, I understood the true horror of the Ragman. It was not just a predator, it was a prison of souls, each one a threat in its ragged form, bound together by their shared despair. And now, I was to become one of them, another thread in its never-ending tapestry of sorrow. Enveloped in the Ragman's chilling grasp, the barrage of emotions and memories continued to flood over me. I was lost in a sea of other people's lives, each one a fragment of the sorrow that fueled this entity. It felt like drowning, being pulled deeper into the abyss of the Ragman's existence. But amidst this turmoil, something unexpected happened, a flicker of my own will, a spark of my own identity amidst the chaos. I clung to it, to my own memories, my own reasons for being here. It was my lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of total absorption. As suddenly as it began, the vision ceased, and I found myself released from the Ragman's embrace. I collapsed to the ground of the warehouse, gasping for air, my body trembling with the aftermath of the encounter. The Ragman itself seemed diminished, its form less substantial, as if our confrontation had weakened it. I didn't stay to contemplate this change. With every ounce of strength left in me, I stumbled out of the warehouse and into the night. The town was silent, the oppressive sorrow that had once filled the air now felt less suffocating. Somehow, I had survived the Ragman, but I knew I was forever changed. In the days that followed, I struggled to process what had happened. The memories of the souls I had experienced within the Ragman haunted me, their echoes a constant reminder of the entity's curse. I couldn't bring myself to write about it, the words felt hollow, inadequate to convey the depth of horror I had experienced. The town slowly began to recover from its long-standing grief, as if my encounter with the Ragman had broken some kind of spell. But the scars remained, both on the town and on me. I left soon after, unable to bear the weight of those haunting memories. I found myself wandering, aimlessly, trying to escape the shadow that the Ragman had cast over my life. The encounter had left a mark on me, both physically and mentally. There was a ragged scar on my arm, a permanent reminder of the entity's touch, and a deep, unexplainable sadness that clung to me, a sorrow not entirely my own. I never published the story of the Ragman. It felt wrong, somehow, to expose those souls to the world. Instead, I kept it to myself, a private burden I would carry. But the story had a way of spreading, as such stories do. Whispers of my encounter made their way through the grapevine, morphing into urban legend. The tale of the Ragman lived on, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved, some shadows best left unexplored. As for me, I continued my journey, searching for a peace I feared I would never find, always wondering if somewhere out there, the Ragman still wandered, a sentinel of sorrow in a world of forgotten shadows.